Bible. It's a compilation of ancient Jewish scrolls organized into two large collections. The first, called the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible, was originally designed with three sections: Torah, the prophets, and the writings. And the second collection, the New Testament, has two main sections: the narrative accounts about Jesus and then his followers, and then a large collection of letters. Altogether, these scrolls tell one unified story about God's purpose to oversee the world through humans, about how we failed, and about God's relentless pursuit to restore us to our true purpose through Jesus. Now, when you open up and read any one of these scrolls, you'll notice that in our modern Bibles, it's been divided up into chapters and then into verses. These were all added much later in the history of the Bible to help people not get lost. But unfortunately, these divisions don't always match the literary design given to each scroll by the original authors. It's important to remember that biblical scrolls were written to be heard, that is, read aloud and memorized and then meditated upon. And so to help with this, the biblical authors used repeated words and patterns that would organize each scroll into larger movements. A movement is a group of stories or poems that have been arranged together into a meaningful whole. For example, the Genesis scroll has 4 literary movements. Each one begins with God giving blessing and life to someone, who then fails and brings about curse and death. And so God moves forward by offering the blessing to the next generation. In Genesis, the first movement begins with God blessing Adam and Eve. But then they fail and things get really bad, and so God rescues and blesses Noah, and then he fails too and things get worse. So in the next movement, God promises to bless Abraham and all nations through him. And even though he too fails, Abraham trusts in God's commitment to bless the world through his descendants. Then in the third movement, we get to Abraham's grandson, Jacob. And God wants to bless him, but Jacob keeps deceiving the people around him, trying to manipulate God's blessing for himself. And it all leads to the final movement. God blesses Jacob with many sons, but they lie and almost kill each other. And so God has to somehow transform their violent rivalry into blessing and life for the nations. Each biblical scroll has been organized in this kind of careful and intentional way. And reading biblical scrolls according to their literary movements, that's a great first step towards hearing the Bible on its own terms. Now, as you read through a movement, you can track key patterns and themes by paying attention to important words and ideas that repeat and develop throughout the movement. This is when you begin to see how each movement contributes to the overall biblical story.